For this special, I'm going to do something I don't do very often, and that's talk about my own experiences. This being Roadside Ghosts, for what few there have been. These experiences are as true and accurate as my memory serves. The first one takes place at Cockney Hill on the A60. At the time I used to travel regularly, which meant going over Cockney Hill, where I had several instances of the same thing happening. But it's a puzzle that unfortunately I never solved. As you can see from this picture, you gotta love Google Road View, the road up the hill from Church Warsop is quite steep, and so far up on the right hand side is a cemetery, and then it goes into farmland, and at the top is a very pretty wooded area split in two by the road. There's also a house set in the trees, and it must be awesome to live somewhere so remote. There are also lay-bys to park up and take in the scenery or walk along the pathways into the wood. Now these paranormal experiences always happened at night. I would get through the trees and begin the descent down towards Cockney when a car would come from the treed area behind me with its headlights dipped. I couldn't make out the colour, just that it was a car. Now so far down is a bend in the road that cuts off the rear view, as you can see from the satellite view. There's no turn-offs at that point, not until just before reaching the bottom of the hill where you can see the set of crossroads. And coming out of the bend, as you can see from this picture, the view of the hill is back again. Now on some of these nights I'd come out of the bend and the road would be clear, the car would be gone, like it had just disappeared. On a couple of occasions I did run the risk of going onto the opposite side of the road when I saw headlights come from the trees, just to keep it in sight longer, but they turned out to be real, with one being a police car, so I was lucky not to be pulled over that night. And so, for all I know, that ghostly car may still appear to the unsuspecting lone night driver. This roadside ghost, if that's what it can be called, was seen by myself and two passengers in my car. I love night driving and had gone along the road through the village of Budby many times. This was some time ago when the road was being resurfaced and new reflection studs, or what we call cat's eyes, were being set in place. The white cat's eyes separate the lanes, as you can see here. Now on motorways they use white for lane separation, green to show drivers the entrance and exit to slip roads, and red shows where the lane is for when needing to stop in an emergency, which is also called a hard shoulder. But the cat's eyes I'd seen here I'd never seen before, as when the light caught them they sparkled like different flecks of colour like crystal. When friends came over, we decided to go out for a drive, and I enthused about the cat's eyes, saying how good they were, and so that's where I took them. What I found puzzling was, when we got to Budby, which is a small village with no more than a handful of houses, that being where the cat's eyes were set, but that night they were so dull I could barely see them, and they were reflecting less than the regular cat's eyes. Anyway, I continued on through the wide sharp bend that goes past the last of the houses. The road is then very countryside, but because it was night time, and with no street lighting on this road, it was only the headlights of my car that lit the way. The road then becomes tree-lined on both sides, this being Sherwood Forest. The turn-off here leads to Edwinstowe and the Sherwood Centre, where the famous Major Oak, as allegedly used by Robin Hood and his men, can be found. I continued to go straight on to Ollerton roundabout, where we could get something to eat before heading back. It wasn't far from reaching the well-lit area of the roundabout, where there's a sign on the opposite side of the road, this one for traffic going in the opposite direction to the way we was heading, warning of deer that often cross the road in their travels through the wood. It was no more than 50 feet away that what looked like a large black cat emerged from the left side of the road and crossed in front of us. One of my passengers said, "What is that?" It looked to be less solid and more a shadow by the time it reached the other side of the road. It was when it got to the other side, by the signpost, that it stopped. By this time we was around 10 feet away. I think we was all surprised and a little taken aback when its head turned and looked at us with two red glowing eyes. It then slinked off into Sherwood Forest, leaving us to wonder what it was we had just seen. This last experience involves a friend of a friend. A young man, too young really, was diagnosed with leukemia and was having treatment. He'd been very sick, but seemed to be pulling through, though the treatment was continuing. Without showing that he was at the end of his tether, that he was ready to give up, he went to my friend and asked if he could borrow a tow rope. But he didn't have a tow rope, so couldn't help. My friend went over that visit several times, thinking about if there was some sign that he could have done something different. The young man did eventually get a tow rope, and so was not only prepared, but determined. He then drove along this B road towards a place called Blythe, which is in Nottinghamshire. At Blythe there are junctions to get onto the A1 and the motorway. This isn't especially a quiet road, and gets quite busy in the morning and early evening with commuters to and from work. On the way to Blythe the road is relatively straight, but then comes to a bridge over a river that is set at an angle. This is known as Red Bridge. The young man put his foot down on the accelerator, and going at speed had no intention of turning the steering wheel to stay on the road. The car crashed through the wall, plunging onto the embankment below. It's said the young man got out of the wreckage without a scratch. Now that could have been seen as a sign that he wasn't meant to die that day, but he had a tow rope, and taking it to a tree, well, you know what I'm going to say. Sadly, he hung himself and remained there until a passing motorist came across the bridge. The bridge was being repaired, which meant having single-file traffic going over it. It was at this time that I was working in the Blythe area, and so had to go over the bridge. On this particular evening I was coming out of Blythe on my way home by motorbike when I came to the bridge as the lights changed to red. Being first in what was becoming a long queue as traffic began to build up behind me, I just happened to see a movement on the opposite side of the road. Turning my head to look, I lifted the visor on my helmet, and there, stood by the bridge, was a young man. I spoke to him, but he didn't reply. However, I did feel his confusion, as though death wasn't what he expected it to be. I told him it was okay to cross over, as so many are taught that suicide is an ultimate sin, and people who commit such an act won't be allowed into heaven, where my belief is that no one is turned away. I didn't have much time as the lights changed to green and had to move on. Though I went along that road for another 2 weeks, until my work there was finished, I didn't see or even sense his presence. It was a couple of years later that I went that way. This time I was in my car with a passenger, it being late at night. I'd had some work done on the engine and wanted to run it in, so a night drive out was the accepted norm. I entered Blythe from one way and, heading for home, left for the road that took us over Red Bridge. I also had the dog in the car, and knowing a few yards past Red Bridge there's a lay-by, so intended to park and let him do what dogs do. I had heard stories about people having seen a young man near Red Bridge, and a taxi had even stopped to see if he wanted a ride, only for the young man to disappear. But once I got past Red Bridge I didn't think I would see him, and so it came as a surprise when I had about got to the lay-by, and there he was, stood by the side of the road. In fact, it was such a surprise that I put my foot down on the accelerator, overshooting the lay-by. I could have kicked myself for doing that. I feel my chance to help him was lost, but he was further away from the bridge, and think he's working his way very slowly towards home. And those are 3 of my experiences with roadside ghosts.